Okay, I will call to order this hearing of February 22nd, 2024 for Clackamas County Land Use. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the county's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow, so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing. I start by saying I'm not a county employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you're getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I am not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with Board of Commissioners and county or Planning Commission to do that. The state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As the hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker, and I believe I am unbiased with regard to this application. I've not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. As I noted before the recording started, I do work with Mr. Eisman. He's contract planner for a couple of jurisdictions in Washington where I also provide hearing services, but we haven't discussed this application in any way. I didn't even know he was appearing. But if anybody wants to object to my conducting this hearing, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, including because of my contact with Mr. Eisman, you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county website. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. At this point, there's no one else online that's not applicant or staff, but if anybody does appear and wants to testify, they can do so. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I'll give staff and an applicant the opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If that response includes any new evidence, I'll give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the record. I'll send my decision to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So anybody who testifies orally or in writing before the close of the record will receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. Anyone with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony. It's important that all parties make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me. If you feel you need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open or continue the hearing for any other purpose, I must make that request before the close of the hearing today. When you testify, please begin by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone, please say so. And then as far as the technical online Zoom issues, I'll leave that up to staff. So Ms. Lord, if you want to start that out and your staff report.
Sure, thank you. So I'll go ahead and read our script just in case anyone does come. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. For attendees on PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide your testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you have provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of the hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email your testimony to myself at mlord@clackamas.us, or you can mail it to Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City 97045. My contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the link for today's Zoom hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address by email to myself at mlord@clackamas.us or by entering it in the Zoom chat function during today's hearing. And I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation to go over my staff report, so I will go ahead and share my screen and do that. Okie doke. Were we seeing my PowerPoint here?
Yep.
Excellent. Alrighty. So again, my name is Melissa Lord. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division with regards to a conditional use permit, land use file Z0274-23. And this land use application is for a property up in Welch's, generally near Fairway Avenue and Highview Drive. The property has split zoned. The property is zoned Hoodland Residential, or HR, and Open Space Management, OSM. The particular development will take place on the Hoodland Residential zoned portion of the site. The site itself is about 21 acres in size, and I'll show you on a subsequent slide just that the development will only take place in a very, very small portion of the property. The property itself is currently occupied with the Golf Club Terrace Pump Station, which was developed in 1987, and it's been operating on site ever since. The proposal that we're reviewing as a conditional use permit today is for upgrades and improvements to this existing pump station. These improvements will include replacing an existing control building with a new control building, adding a new permanent generator, moving overhead power to underground, extending water service to the site from Water Main and Highland Road. And there's a longer, more comprehensive list of the exact proposal in the applicant's submitted project narrative. The purpose of their application is to replace old and failing equipment to increase the reliability of the facility and to address specific maintenance issues. The Clackamas Water Environment Services, or WES, pump station is what we call a public utility facility, which necessitates a conditional use permit in the HR zoning district. There is no such conditional use permit already on file with the county, which is why we're reviewing these improvements as a conditional use permit. So here's another image of the property. As you can see in the on the right-hand side, there's a smaller arrow pointing to a small portion of the site, and this is the extent of the project area. So as you can see, it's much smaller than the total 21-acre property. Zooming in a little, the project does back on, or the development site does back on to a couple properties on either side. And I've just shown a picture here of the existing control building that will be replaced with this application. And then zooming in one image even closer, I've just highlighted a few of the proposed changes that the applicant's requesting to make to this site with the conditional use permit. So the replacement control building for the pump facility, the new permanent generator that will be under the covered awning of the pump facility, valve vault, replacing an existing manhole lid with the access hatch. This site plan was provided with the application materials, and so you're able to zoom in on their submitted materials and see all of the detailed notations on their plan, but just highlighting a few of the items here that we're looking at. In my staff report that was entered into the record as exhibit number 1, I did provide a detailed description or list of review and findings for all of the relevant zoning and development ordinance sections. I've listed those sections here, but I won't spend too much time going through each and every one of them in my presentation, but I do want to provide just generally a high-level overview of some of these relevant sections. And so overall, the staff recommends that the hearings officer approve this land use application subject to conditions, and I'll do my best to explain why in the subsequent slides. ZDO section 1002 discusses the standards for protecting natural features. So the development itself is not located on slopes of 20% or greater, and so that particular criteria is not applicable to this development. There's not excessive tree removal. Excessive tree removal in this section is specific to properties within the urban growth boundary. This particular site's outside of the urban growth boundary. It's not within a river and stream corridor buffer area, so that particular standard is not applicable. The project is within the deer and elk winter range, below 3,000 feet of elevation. And as I wrote in my staff report, we find that the project is staying within the existing development and easement area and won't be encroaching into any deer or elk habitat to impact any of their range. And so this particular criteria we found to be met. Section 1003 and 1004 are not applicable to the proposed development. 1003 talks about hazards to safety, so mass movement areas, soil hazards, flood hazards. Those are not relevant to the subject, to the development site. And similarly, section 1004 talks about historic and cultural resource preservation, and that's not applicable to this project site either. CDO section 1005 has standards for site and building design. Now, the site design criteria we found to be met. The facility and the control building are not open to the public at any time, and it's an unmanned or unstaffed facility, and there are no changes to site circulation or the building use. Similarly, the building design criteria of this particular section talk a lot about design standards for buildings that are visible from a public right-of-way. This building is not, the control building is not visible from the public right-of-way. And then there's a lot of design standards that pertain to the public entrances or public facing facades of buildings, which again, the building is not accessible by the public at any time. And so these standards are not relevant. The building materials that are being proposed to be used for the new control building are compliant with this criteria. And so as applicable, we found that the standards for section 1005 are met. Section 1006 pertains to utilities. And so the Salmon Valley Water Authority is the water service provider in this area. Some of the project scope does involve extending a water main or installing a new service from the street. The Salmon Valley Water Company did sign a preliminary statement of feasibility, confirming that this project is possible, or they have the services that can make this project possible in their water service district. Similarly, Wes, who's also the applicant, is the sanitary sewer provider and the surface water management authority in this area, and they too provided a signed preliminary statement of feasibility, confirming also that the sanitary sewer and the surface water, both of those standards can be met, or both of those, the project can be achieved within their service district. The Clackamas County Development Engineering Division reviewed the project for compliance, to see if it was compliant with Section 1007 pertaining to roads and connectivity. They did find that the project does meet the standards of Section 1007. There's no increase in vehicle trips to and from the site. There'll be no change to vehicular access from East Highview Drive. The site itself is not on a designated transit route, and there's no offices or on-site staff. It's not open to the public, and so the bicycle and pedestrian facilities wouldn't apply to this particular development. And so again, we found that Section 1007 was being complied with. In a similar vein, we looked at Section 1015 pertaining to parking. The control building is not staffed, and the development does not require any additional parking. And the site is visited for occasional maintenance needs, and so there is adequate space within the easement area, within this development area, for a maintenance vehicle to be able to park to perform their maintenance duties on site. Section 1021 relates to solid waste and recycling. We found that this section was not applicable for this particular development because there's no existing or proposed demand for waste and recycling. Again, because there's no on-site staff, there's no office, and the building's not open to the public at any time. And then lastly, I'll touch upon the standards for conditional uses, Section 1203. Public utility facilities, as I mentioned, was a conditional use permit in the Hoodland Residential Zoning District. So that's why we're reviewing this as a conditional use permit today. The project site or the property is not visible from the public right of way. We're not changing, there are no changes to the proposed use or scale of the operation. It's been on site for the past 35 plus years, and the pump station is essential to support the sewer district with adequate and reliable sanitary sewer service. And so for those reasons, generally, and all the reasons that I've specifically laid out in my staff report, we recommend that the application be approved with a couple conditions. And so with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and my presentation and ask if you have any questions or clarifying points that I can make for you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the Mr. Eisman, are you representing the applicant? Or?
Yes, I am, Mr. Examiner. My name is Eric Eisemann, E-R-I-C-E-I-S-E-M-A-N-N with E2 Land Use Services. My mailing address is 2554 Northeast 48th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97213. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for an excellent presentation and a very thorough report. I think the county's done an excellent job here, and so I want to thank you for that. With me today is Jessica Renner from West, project engineer on this, and also is Mr. Adam Crafts with Consor Engineering, who's the project engineer for the design build portion here. I have been authorized by Ms. Renner to speak on their behalf. And first, again, I'd like to thank staff for their good work. We have listened to the presentation. We have nothing new to add into the record at this time. And we accept the staff report as written, and we also accept the conditions of approval as prepared. And that is the extent of our statement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eisman.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything about this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none. Anything further from the county? I would just like to add that we have not received any public comment thus far. Thank you. Mr. Eisman, do you want to waive the applicant's right to submit a final written argument?
Yes, we do.
I thought you might. So with that, I will close the hearing, and based on the findings in the staff report, this application does or will comply with the approval criteria subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. So I will approve this application subject to those conditions. I'll issue my written decision to that effect within about 2 weeks, and I'll send that to the county, and the county will send it to parties of record. But that concludes our hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.